Welcome back to the fourth episode of the show. I'm your host, AJ Long. Took the last few weeks off. Didn't really want to talk about 7-on-7. Didn't get to see a ton of the scrimmages because most of the teams in the Valley were off elsewhere. And then, let's be honest, who wanted to hear me talk about the EPC North versus the EPC South in week one when the only real games that there were to talk about was Liberty Deerhoof and Central versus Northampton. Everyone after that was a wash, and hence the South going, was it 8-0 versus the North? And the average point differential in those games was 30. The only 2 or 3 being close was Freedom versus Stroudsburg, 14-0. Liberty versus Deerhoof, 14-0. And then Allentown Central Catholic, 17-16 over Northampton. And so, but now here we are, 2 weeks into the season. We had some EPC South matchups. You have some EPC North matchups. And overall, we're seeing how the season is likely going to unfold in these early weeks. And so, let's talk about it. As many of you saw over the weekend, we released our new power rankings. And in order, they go from 8 to number 1, Northampton at 8, Notre Dame Green Pond at 7, Bethlehem Catholic at 6, Emmaus at 5, Southern Lehigh at 4, Parkland at 3, Central at 2, and the Nazareth Blue Eagles at 1. And so let's dig into that. Like we said, coming in at that A spot is Northampton. Playing Central week 1, took them to the wire, overtime, go for the win after you score in overtime. As their coach said, they were down to their 5th, 6th, 7th DB because their starter got hurt on the opening kickoff. Their backups were cramping. Their backups were cramping. And so they figured that their best shot at winning that game was going for 2 right there. And Central just did a great job by forcing AJ Slivka to hold it down and keep it, and Dante, stopping him at the 3-yard line to end the game. They had them, and then this past week they played Pocono Mountain East, and as most of us know, that their schedule is going to be a whole lot, it's going to be drastically easier than their week 1 and week 10 matchups between Central and Whitehall. They're going to win the EPC North again. There's not really a question about that. Outside is if Stroudsburg gets their freshman playing. I think that their freshman quarterback in Jack Mitchell and their freshman receiver in Hayden Downs, if any of you have had the opportunity to watch them play in their first few JV games, they give that offense a spark on that level. Now, granted, it's a little different on Friday nights, but up against that conference, outside of Northampton, I think if they can get those kids ready before that week, they can make a convincing argument, to be able to beat that Northampton squad led by AJ Slivka and Caden Henritz. But yeah, so therefore, coming in at number 8, their seasons are only going to get better. They're going to run the rock they're going to run the rock a ton behind Caden and AJ, and look forward to seeing that matchup between Northampton and Stroudsburg as it gets closer to that point. Coming in at number 7. We talked about them before the year. Schedule lined up for them to go 9-1, 10-0, and their only game that we really questioned on whether they'll win is that Southern Lehigh game. As somebody that played for Phil, I know that they struggle to stop the run. If anybody, watching was there when I played Southern Columbia in 2011, couldn't stop the run then. Any time that we play a team, anytime that Phil plays a team, anytime that my brother, who played for Phil at Notre Dame, plays a team that runs the football and just sticks to it, Notre Dame and Pius X, when he was the head coach there, struggled to stop them. And we all saw it, or maybe not all, but I highly doubt that everybody didn't see the score to that game where Southern Lehigh beat them 68-28. Everybody's like, well, how are they still in the top 8? Because of the fact that if you go scheme for scheme, right? We said it before the year. This was the game. If they can get past that hump, they'll be fine. Well, they didn't get past that hump, but I don't see another team being able to play with them, this season. And I think, honestly, with that offense that Phil runs at Notre Dame, if they were to play teams in the EPC, they would give a lot of them a whole lot of problems because people don't know how they don't know how to cover space. They don't know how to stop athletes in space, and Notre Dame has that. And so right now they're 1-1 with a win week 1 versus Saucon Valley, which things were shaky to start, and then they got that train rolling in the second half, and then last week, opening the game with a 67-yard touchdown by Danny Darno, and then after that the wheels kind of just fell off entirely, and Southern Lehigh doing what Southern Lehigh did. But yeah, they still, even with that, deserve a spot in the top 8 because I still believe that they are one of the top 8 teams in the Lehigh Valley. Coming in at number 7, they felt disrespected that they weren't in our power rankings to start the season, even though they were the District 4A runner-up last year. They felt disrespected that a bunch of their players weren't in our top returning players. And through the first 2 weeks of the season, they're making it very well known that, we might have lost a lot of pieces. We might have lost Eric Wirt. We might have lost their big 6-foot target that went on to Northern Iowa. Might have lost our quarterback. We might have lost DJ. We might have lost all these guys, but we still got a lot of dudes in this school. And coming in at number 6 is Bethlehem Catholic. Convincing wins over Pleasant Valley week 1 and last week with what I and many believe was an upset, beating Whitehall convincingly 34-21. And let's be honest, the only reason that they managed to score 21 points is because Bethlehem Catholic pulled their starters. At one point, that game was 34-7 once it got to the third quarter, and it was as good as over. So you get to the fourth quarter, Whitehall managed to score a few times to make it look closer than what it was, but all in all, Bethlehem Catholic dominated this game from start to finish, with Sutton breaking off the first run of the game for a 75-yard touchdown. And then after that, Carter and Caden in the third quarter just absolutely breaking the game open. And so, must give our respect to Bethlehem Catholic and their new head coach. And so we'll see how they do moving into the rest of their season. Obviously, it only gets tougher from here for them as they prepare to play the gauntlet on the back end of their year. This week they'll have Pocono Mountain East. They'll start the season 3-0. They'll start the season 4-0 because following that they have Liberty, and then it go Easton, Emmaus, Freedom, Parkland, Nazareth, and as we all know, to end the year, the good old Holy War. And so we're going to see, they're going to start the season off strong, but how do you finish at the end of the year? But all in all, so far, you got to give them their props because they are doing what nobody thought that they were going to do this year. Coming in at number 5 was our previous 1 seed in Emmaus. You play Pocono Mountain East week 1. You did what you're supposed to do, winning 41-0. And then you go into the much anticipated matchup of Nazareth this past week, and they never showed up to the party. Nazareth came in to Emmaus Stadium and absolutely humiliated them with a 42-7 convincing win, to prove to everybody that, okay, you might think that they're good, but we are them, and so we're going to see how Emmaus responds this week with their matchup against Allentown Central Catholic. They got 2 games back to back with Central Catholic and Whitehall, and we're going to see how that turns out for them. Do they bounce back from the shellacking that Nazareth just put on them, or do they kind of fold it in, and drop 2 and maybe three games in a row? We're going to find out, but yet again, still, you can't name me 4 other teams that deserve to be in there over them and that have the potential that they have, up until this point. Obviously they have Mario Landino. They have their tackle that is committed to Sacred Heart. They have Rafael Torreiro, Riley Guffrey. They have a lot of pieces. It is, can Fairclaw and that staff now adjust and get their team back on the right track? Coming in at number 4, we talked about them earlier when we talked about Notre Dame and the shellacking that they put on them. Southern Lehigh to start the year 2-0 with big wins over Quakertown and Notre Dame Green Pond. Quakertown, not many people from the Lehigh Valley watch them or pay attention to them because they don't play anybody in the EPC or that we normally get to see, whether it's the Colonial or the EPC. But with the way that they played this past weekend and what Becca did to Whitehall, Southern Lehigh, in my opinion, is the front runner to win that 5A district title. The way that they run the ball, the way that their offense functions in general, and how well that head coach and offensive coordinator, run that system and set up what it is that they want to do, they're doing a masterful job up there. With Tolman leaving and going to Northampton, and then this new coach stepping in, it is. Whew, to lose last year to Whitehall in the 5A district title game, and then to start the year that they started it now, you can tell that these kids all offseason have been working towards a common goal, and I believe that goal is to finish the year undefeated 5A district champs and make a run in the state playoffs. And so it's going to be a lot of fun to watch and witness. Obviously, once we get out of states, or once they get out of districts and they're going to run in to Emotep Charter or Roman Catholic or any number of who comes out of the Philly League or the Philly districts, their season's going to end there. But that's a long way away. But still, these guys, District 11 front runners for the 5A district title. I'm looking forward to watching what they do when there's a kid that we're going to talk about later in the top performers so far in the first 2 weeks. Coming in at number 3, and before I get to these 3, we can put them, really I want to say 2 and 3 can be put in either order. 1, after what they did this past week, it's going to be hard for me to dethrone them and say that they're not the best team. But depending on how these next few weeks shake out, we're going to see. But coming in at number 3, Parkland, led by Tim Monsman, led by Luke Spang and Trey Trumba. First week they played Pocono Mountain West, taking care of business. And then last week, Freedom, who was previously in our power rankings, who we thought, they could be a very good team if they could figure out their quarterback situation. And it's very clear that they have not, with a lackluster performance of 14-0 to Stroudsburg, and then getting absolutely shellacked by Parkland 35-0, where Luke Spang put on a masterful performance, 4 passing touchdowns, spreading the ball all over, and absolutely just busting that game open. This is going to be fun to watch. Monsman has that defense doing what he does best and just shutting people out. Now, obviously, we're going to see how this year goes, the remainder of the year. This week they're walking in to Liberty, so back-to-back games at BASD Stadium. And then to follow that up, they play Nazareth. So, okay, this week, Parkland's going to start the year 3-0. Probably another convincing win. Sorry, Gabe. Sorry, Jake. Sorry, Liberty. But I don't see y'all winning that game. And then we're going to talk about arguably one of the biggest, if not the biggest game of the year between Nazareth and Parkland with the way that it's looking. So, Parkland has the opportunity to move up in these power rankings in the next 2 weeks, based off of how they perform. And if they can get through Nazareth. Granted, Nazareth has to go up there to Parkland, and so they'll have home field advantage. It is just going to be, it's going to be a fun game to watch, and I'm looking forward to that one. Now, moving in at number 2, they've stayed at the number 2 spot. They're the number 5 team in 5A in the state. For the first 2 weeks, they've arguably had the toughest schedule out of everybody, which really ain't that hard, but open up the season with Northampton, and then this past week having to go to Cottingham, where even though it might not be as tough as it was, back in the going back all the way probably to the 1980s, 90s, early 2000s, and even the early 2010s, Cottingham is still a hard place to win football games. So Allentown Central Catholic, week 1, 17-16 overtime win against Northampton, and then last week that 37-20 victory over Easton at Cottingham. They are solidly in that 2 spot for now. Obviously, big matchup this week versus Easton. We're going to see how they fare in these coming weeks. They're about to hit the gauntlet of their schedule. This week they have Emmaus, then they have Freedom, then Parkland, then Nazareth. And so, they had a nice warm-up in those first 2 games, their first 3 games. Freedom, I think that they should, as long as they continue to play the way that they're playing, they should roll through them, especially if Freedom's quarterbacks can't figure it out. And then Parkland and Nazareth mid-year are going to be, I think, 2 of the best games of the year. I think by that point, we're going to get to watch, sophomore quarterback Tone Fontanez and Nazareth sophomore quarterback Peyton Falzone duke it out. And then at the end of the year, we're going to get to watch, again, a battle of the 2026 quarterbacks between Fontanez and Caden Vassa at Bethlehem Catholic. But that is down the line. They got another big hurdle this week to get ahead to get over Emmaus. I mean, they have Emmaus coming to Allentown School District Stadium, J. Bernie Crum. And so that is the game of the week, and we're going to see if Allentown Central Catholic is for real or if Emmaus gets back on that winning way this Friday. And coming in at number 1, we said it before the season started, this team is, no question about it, the most explosive team in the Lehigh Valley. I mean, you have Mason Keener, a plethora of Division I offers. Caleb Newsom, who's picked up Lehigh and Lafayette, and by the time it's said and done, he'll have, probably 12 to 15, maybe 20 offers, as long as he keeps playing the way that he's playing. He's coming off of a 100-yard performance this past week against Emmaus. They have Marquise Wimberly, who already has offers from FAMU and West Virginia. And the guy pulling the trigger in Peyton Falzone, who's 6'4", 210, and is operating his dad's offense masterfully, doing a great job of getting the ball all around the people, being efficient. In the first 2 weeks of the season, he's completing over 67% of his passes, which, as many of us know, is not easy to do in your first few high school starts on varsity. And so, convincing wins over East Stroudsburg South and Emmaus. I believe that team's going to continue to get stronger as the year goes on. It's only going to get harder to beat. Now, obviously, we said it before that they are going to play Freedom this week. Then they have Parkland after that. And so this week, I believe that they're going to put on another show, against Freedom at home over there in Nazareth. My guess is it'll be another 40-something to nothing, 40-something to 7-point victory. And then the real test is when they have to go up to Parkland and play them and see how that game turns out. I'm really looking forward to that one. And so, yeah, power rankings so far, we've had people jump, we've had people move in, we've had people fall out. All in all, I think the biggest disappointments in the first 2 weeks have been Freedom and their inability to move the ball on offense and score points and get that quarterback game or get that quarterback situation figured out and get the ball to their athletes in space. And Whitehall, I think that this offseason, maybe we hyped them up a little bit too much. Maybe we thought that they were going to come out and do a lot better job in their passing game and Trey Dog Mannis operating that offense. And so, it's disappointing with looking at both of those rosters and seeing how much talent there is at Freedom, how well Whitehall, has acclimated to their new head coach, their new system, their new scheme, And maybe it's just too early to tell with them. Maybe they need a few more games under their belt in that system to be able to know, what it is that they got to do and how to operate. And also, Dog Manis can't throw 3 interceptions in a game for them to be successful. But, through the first 2 weeks, really want to see more from those two teams. Liberty starting out 2-0 as they should, playing Deerfield, playing East Stroudsburg North, who, to be honest, are not good football programs. They have not been good football programs. Not a super convincing win against Deerfield week 1 with only 14-0 and their best player getting hurt in the first drive of the game. And so I think that they need to figure out who they're going to go with at quarterback and what it is that they're going to do there for them to be able to take strides in becoming better, because it's clear that the kids might not be the biggest, but they do have talent. Between Gabe Green and Jake Puxon, I can't remember number 6's name. I apologize. And then defensively, you have Jeremiah Vasquez, who's played corner really well so far to this point in the year, but you have him on the other side. I can't remember. I'm sorry. I apologize. I can't remember what his name is. But overall, they've played really well. They've played sound gap scheme football, and they are forcing the ball to the middle of the field. They're rallying, they're tackling, they're playing with a high energy level. And so we're going to see. Obviously Liberty hasn't had the most successful track record with Dano. This year, obviously, like we said, they started with Deerfield and East Stroudsburg North, where those are games they should win. But now, when they hit the EPC South, like let's look at this. They play Parkland this week at home. Then they play Bethlehem Catholic. Then they play Nazareth. Then they go to Cottingham. Then they have Central, Emmaus, Whitehall, and obviously you finish the year with Freedom. Now we're going to find out if this Liberty football program is turning around, or if it's the same 1-9, 2-8 teams that we've seen the last 2 years. I hope that they do well. We all know that the Lehigh Valley is better when Liberty and Easton are good. And we haven't had that for a long time. We haven't had Liberty be good since Monsman left. We haven't had Easton be good since Schiffer walked out. And I don't think anybody would say that they miss watching that system, but we definitely miss Easton being as competitive and as physical as we know Easton to be. And so, with watching them this past week versus Central Catholic, there's no question that Easton has the talent. There's no question that whether Easton is big enough. I mean, if you look at them, Jasir Fretchy on one side, who we're going to talk about a lot later, J.C. Wilson on the other side, Murad Carter, all three of them are 6'3" and up, and all of them are either 180 to 210 pounds. And those are just 3 guys, not including the fact that they still have Josh Mundell, they still have Will Day, they still have Dorian, they still have Dorian, they still have Michael Assisi at middle linebacker, number 40, who I apologize, I can't remember your name. Like, they have all these pieces. Their big tackle, number 68, who is he's going to play college football, whether it's probably at the D2 or 1AA level, depending on how he fine-tunes his skills. I think for Easton, it's just you pick a quarterback and you go with it. This whole rotating a quarterback every drive, they've been successful, but week 1, you played nobody. And then last week you played Central, and you could see that when their quarterbacks got into a rhythm, the ball moved down the field effortlessly. I just don't think that they're allowing their quarterbacks to get into a rhythm. And also, we got to get the ball to Fretchy and J.C. Wilson. For Wilson to finish the game with only, I believe, 2 catches, and Jasir to finish the game with 3 catches and 2 of them going for touchdowns. Yes, Will Day is an absolute workhorse, no question about it. He is one of the better running backs in the Lehigh Valley. But you arguably, and I will say this again later, and I'm going to stick by it, you arguably have the best player in the Lehigh Valley and arguably one of the best players in the state of Pennsylvania in Jasir Fretchy, and he's only touched the ball so far 4 times this year. I mean, it's the same old thing with Easton that we said before. They don't get their playmakers involved enough. The last time that we saw Easton get the ball to their best player and force you to have to stop him from the first quarter to the fourth quarter is Jared Holly. Shane Simpson, one of my best friends, one of my great friends, even he didn't touch the ball the amount that he should have at Easton. We have not seen somebody at Easton be force-fed the rock in a way that is like, he's the best player, please try to stop him. I think Easton needs to do that and find a way to get the ball to their playmakers' hands in space. Between J.C. Wilson, who's 6'4", 190 pounds, between Jasir Fletcher, who's 6'4", almost 210 pounds, I'm forcing people to have to stop them. Like, you are going to have to take your corner, your safeties, and your outside linebackers and bracket them. And guess what? I'm still going to throw them the ball and force you to try to stop them. Because unless you have a 6'2", 6'3" corner, I don't care. Your safety's not big enough. Your corner's not big enough. Your outside linebacker's not big enough to stop them. And so, between those two, give them the ball in space. Give them screens. Give them whatever. Just get them the ball. And I think that Easton's offense explodes as they go into the rest of this year. And so, all in all, a lot of potential, in the Lehigh Valley to watch some exciting football. I think we are in for some fireworks as this season goes on. But let's talk about some of the guys that to start the first 2 weeks of the season have played some really good football. And to start off that list, I'm going to start off with none other than Peyton Falzone at Nazareth. Obviously, head coach Tom Falzone's son. And you can tell that them living in the same household is paying off. Like, Falzone looks as though he has played the last 2 seasons. He started off the year, like I said, completing over 67% of his passes. He's 24 of 34 for 445 yards and 5 touchdowns. Now, granted, week 1, they play East Stroudsburg South, has a really good week. I believe he threw 3 touchdowns in that game, had over 200 yards passing this past week, had 180 yards passing, another 2 touchdowns. And please, defensive coordinators, I'm letting you know right now, it's not going to be a secret. I know they're probably going to try to keep it a secret. That kid can run. If you think that you're going to be able to drop 8 and I promise you, there's a reason that he was in the district finals for the 300-meter hurdles. The kid can run, and at 6'4", 210 pounds, there's not many people that are going to want to tackle him. So just wait, because right now he's operating efficiently in this passing game, and people are going to try to stop him, or you're going to do whatever you're going to do. But this kid is only going to get better through the course of the season. Him and his dad are operating as if they have one mind, and I'm really excited to watch him play the rest of the year. Coming in after him, his teammate, Mason Keener, who, let's be honest, he can score any way that you can possibly think of. They're going to hand the ball off to him. He's going to take jet sweeps to the house. They're going to throw it to him wherever on the field, whether it's a screen, a slant, a post, a fade. He just makes plays. Special teams, he's the best return man in the Lehigh Valley. And then defensively, he just took a 99-yard pick 6 to the crib. And don't forget that Keener played quarterback his entire life growing up, so he can throw the ball too. So, to start the season off, you have those two, and they have a whole bunch of other guys that can make plays, no question about it. Between Logan Halarczyk having a 100-yard game week 1, Caleb Newsom having a 100-yard game week 2. They still have Wimberly in the backfield. They have number 35, their other running back, whose last name I can't pronounce, and I'm not going to embarrass myself doing that. And then the forgotten guy in that offense is tight end Frankie Morose. So, all in all, plethora of talent. Whole lot of guys to get the ball to, but those 2 guys for Nazareth week 1 and 2 have been lights out. Then we go to Parkland. Like I said, he had a 4-touchdown game this past week against Freedom. He's played the last 3 years. Luke Spang clearly is dialed in to start the season. Really looking forward to seeing what he does these next 2 weeks. I think that he has another 3 touchdown game this week against Liberty at BASD Stadium. And then next week, that monster matchup between them and Nazareth. You're talking about senior versus sophomore when it comes to quarterback battle. I think that he's going to go out with a chip on his shoulder to prove like, hey, yo, like you can play, but I'm top dog around here. And so Luke Spang playing really good football. Looking forward to seeing what he does these next 2 weeks. We talked about Southern Lehigh and their running game, and the guy that is spearheading that charge is Cade Sawyer. Through the first 2 weeks, he's got 360 yards and 4 touchdowns. Obviously, they got up big on Notre Dame, and so you kind of wean back a little bit on what he does production-wise, because they scored so many different ways in that game. Their quarterback, I believe, threw 2 touchdowns. They had a blocked punt for a touchdown. They had a fumble, scoop, and score for a touchdown. And so he finished the game with 257 yards rushing and 3 rushing touchdowns, and he easily probably could have gone for over 3 and 5. So I look forward to seeing what he does. I think after this week we're talking about through 3 games, he's got over 500 yards rushing. He probably has somewhere between, he either has 6 or 7 touchdowns total by next week. Not in the game, but I think he adds 2 to 3 touchdowns to his stats. And we're talking about through 3 weeks, and there's 7 more games after this. So by mid-season, we can talk about this kid having 1,000 yards rushing if they continue on this trend. And by the end of the year, especially if them getting into the state playoffs, talking about a kid that can have 1,500 yards and close to, or if not over, 20 touchdowns. And you don't do that by just being, decent. Like, this kid, if he chooses, if he wants to, will play college football. Whether it be D3, D2, I don't know, because of the fact that I don't know top end speed. I know Notre Dame has some guys that can run a little bit. I don't think they have anybody that can really fly. But yet again, like, he managed to run away from their defense and have big plays throughout the course of the night. And so, yeah, Cade Sawyer, really looking forward to watching him, and seeing what he does the remainder of this season. Now, let's talk about Bethlehem Catholic. And Lehigh Valley Live put it in a fun way that you can in the Super Vasa Bros, in Caden and Carter Vasa. And we're going to start with the freshman in Carter. We had him going into the season as the number 2 freshman to watch in the area. And boy, did he put on a show this past week against Whitehall, not playing like a freshman. Him and his brother connecting for 3 touchdowns in the third quarter, like we said, to break that game open. He had 8 catches for 127 yards and 3 touchdowns. Obviously, somebody that everybody is going to have to pay attention to. Him and his brother have a great connection. Obviously, you grow up together. And so, definitely somebody to keep an eye on. Definitely one of the top performers, and looking forward to see what he does moving forward through this season. And obviously his brother, Caden, who's the starting quarterback. Last year he got some reps in that district game, playing behind. He was the backup to Luke. This year he's taken over, and he is playing some really good football. Yet again, another kid that's completing over 60% of his passes. This past week he had a 4 touchdown game against Whitehall. He had 2 touchdowns against Pleasant Valley week 1. I think as the year gets on, he's only going to get better and better. I think that offensively they have to find ways to get other people the ball, because if you looked, Carter had 8 catches, and then I think 7 other receivers only had 1 catch throughout the course of the game. I think in order to get that offense operating at its highest efficiency, I think Carter is still going to get his 6, 7, 8 catches in a game, but I think other people, they got to get them going and allow them to get 3, 4, 4 or 5 catches in a game, so that way then teams can't just bracket him and say, okay, figure the rest out. And so they have that. Either way, Caden's playing really good football. Looking forward to seeing what he does the rest of this year. Now we go over to Liberty, and two kids that I've known since they were yay big, and Gabe Green and Jake Puxon. Green through 2 weeks, and mind you, these numbers could be so much bigger, especially this past week. If anybody went to that Thursday night game against East Stroudsburg North, in the first quarter, he had the first 2 touchdowns of the game. It looked like he could go for 300 yards and 5 rushing touchdowns if Liberty let him. But up to this point, he has 278 yards rushing and 5 total touchdowns. I hope that this continues for him. I know that offense is going to struggle when forced to throw the ball. At this point right now, just because you don't know who their quarterback is going to be, both of which Trey Parham and number 1, I apologize for not remembering your name. I should have written it down. But between those two, they haven't played bad football, but they also haven't played at a super high level either against some of the lesser talent that they're going to play throughout the course of the year. So I think in order for Gabe to be able to continue with these numbers, they are going to have to get the ball to the other guy on this list, and Jake Puxon, as well as their other playmakers, in number 6, in Jeremiah Vasquez, in Marcus Ashkernes in the slot. And so, I hope for Gabe's sake and allow him to continue to have the success that he's having, that they get that passing game going, with the other guy that I said, Jake Puxon. This past week, he had 6 catches for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns. Week 1, he should have had 2 touchdowns if his quarterbacks didn't overthrow him on fade balls where he won, and he could have broken that game against Deer of Open. As a kid that was away from football for a year last year, in the first 2 weeks of the season, he is catching his stride, and I hope, like I said, that Liberty gets that passing game going and is able to get him the ball downfield. Really looking forward to what they do. Obviously, this week with Parkland, they're going to struggle. Monsman has had Liberty's number since he left. I don't see that changing. And then obviously they have Bethlehem Catholic the week after that, which is a big rivalry in the Bethlehem area. We know it. Looking forward to seeing how that game plays out. Then, following it up, I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to I'm not going to lie and say that this kid isn't my favorite kid to watch. He's a kid that I have trained since he was 7 years old, and very proud of how he started the year so far. And Antonio Fontanez over at Central Catholic, to this point in the season, he's 31 of 48 for 400 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. Played the Northampton game, and he finishes that game, I believe it was 17 for 17 or 19 of 27 or 29, I can't remember exactly, but like 169 yards passing or something. I don't know. I can't remember the number exactly. And the game-winning touchdown at the end of the game to throw his first varsity touchdown of the year. And then this past week at Conningham, where he finishes 15 of 24 for 236 and 3 touchdowns. And it could have been an even bigger night had Nasir McLean caught a fade ball down the right side in the middle and the back end of the first quarter. And if he had thrown a little bit of a better ball to Aiden Sorrentino to keep him running and not slow down, he probably would have thrown, it would have been about a 68-yard touchdown to him right before halftime. When we're talking about a kid that, going into halftime could have had 4 touchdown passes. I think for Central, one of the things that's going to help break their offense open, is getting the ball to DJ Kelly. Right now, him only having 3 catches and taking a 47-yard touchdown to 47-yard touchdown on a screenplay to the house, being one of your more explosive athletes, and in my opinion, and many, is the best player on that team. He already has offers from Lehigh and UNLV. Lehigh is both a receiver and a DB, and then UNLV as a DB. I think that if they can get him involved more, that offense is only going to become more explosive, because outside of him, Aiden Sorrentino in the first 2 weeks has been lights out. He already has over 200 yards receiving on the year. He has 2 touchdowns, and he should have more. Fontanez missed him on a basically the same play that they scored on a post over the middle, And had he put that on the money, Sorrentino probably would have broke off for another 70-yard touchdown run. You know, and so, yet again, another guy that's performing at a really high level. So you're talking about it, okay, we have to stop DJ Kelly, Aiden Sorrentino, Jarrell Calhoun, who had a very nice 37-yard touchdown catch in that game against Easton to break that lead open. And Nasir McLean. On top of that, they still have Armani Edwards. I believe that's Armani's last name. And so, yeah. Overall, like, I think that Fontenez, as the year goes on and Central's offense evolves, they're going to be, yet again, I think he's another one that's going to put up good numbers. And we're talking about it 2 weeks to the season. He's got 400 passing yards already. You know, if this continues on trend, we're talking about a kid by 2 weeks from now will have 1,000 passing yards. By the end of the year, he'll be over the 2,000-yard mark. And potentially with the run that they could make, we're talking about a kid that could throw for 3,000 yards in the year. And that's the same not only with him, but Caden Vassa and Peyton Falzone. And so, yet again, really excited for that offense, really happy for him and all the kids on this list because, just to be honest and transparent, Falzone, got to meet him when he was a 7th grader, great kid, love him. Mason Keener, met him when he was 13. He's played for the Diamond Athletics program since then. Baller. Luke Spang, never met him, big fan of his game. Caden, known him since he was 12, yet again, worked with him. Jake Puxon, known him since he was 8 years old. Love the kid. Can't wait to see him be more successful. Gabe Green, known him since he was 8. Carter, known him since he was 10. Tone, known him since he was 7. And the last kid on this list. And I said it earlier, and I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to keep saying it until people get this through their thick skulls. Jasir Frecci is arguably the best player in the area. And I got to meet him at 12, and it's taken us the last 2 years to get it through his thick skull that he is a football player. He's a kid that was big and everybody's like, oh, he's going to play basketball. No. If Matt Seneca and Tommy Wills can figure out how to get him the ball and just say, screw it, he's better than everybody else, the same way that people did when we had Devin Street his senior year, when we had Jared West at Liberty, when Jaleel Clark was at Parkland, when Easton had Jared Holly, like, bro, on one leg, because at some point in the game, his I believe it was his left leg got hurt. He torched Central Catholic. Like, I love Nas. He got Nas on a fade ball. Then later in the game, he got Armani on a fade ball. And then he got somebody else on, I don't remember who it was, but he got somebody else on a fade ball to get them down to the red zone before halftime. And defensively, the 2 times that Fontenez tried to throw at him, he almost picked both of them. He absolutely dropped Armani on a screen. And then they tried to run a jet sweep to his way, and he bullied the blocker and tackled Sorrentino for a 2-yard loss. Every time that they tried to go at him, it failed. Offensively, anytime they threw him the ball, it was either a catch or pass interference defensively. The talent that that kid has and the inability for Easton to get him the ball more. Like week 1, he had 1 catch for a touchdown. He caught a hitch route and took it 28 yards. Granted, they played, I don't remember who, and they weren't good. And so it was like, okay, like you don't get to do much in that game because everything else is so easy. And then last week versus Central Catholic, he single-handedly kept them in that game. Like, he's 6'4", he's almost 210 pounds, he runs a 4.6 40. There's not many people, if anybody, that has somebody that can stop him. Like, he's given up 0 catches on the year. 0. He's got 4 PBUs. And like I said, he should have 2 interceptions. 1 he dropped, and the other one Fontenez was smart enough to throw all the way out of bounds so that way he couldn't get to it. Like, myself, And a whole lot of people expect Frutchy to have a big year for Easton. If that team is going to have any success, he is going to have to continue to play at the level that he played this past Friday night. But that also requires his coaches to get him the ball. And everybody's like, AJ, you're talking about a whole bunch of kids that you know. I can't help it that the kids that myself know and the other people that I talk to when we're talking about who are some of the best players in the area, between whether it be my father, Ace Long, my cousin, KJ Williams, Deontay Wilson, who's the defensive backs coach and co-defensive coordinator at Central Catholic, Shorty Pacheco, who's also at Central Catholic, Isaiah Gills. Even when I get the chance to talk to Tim Monsman or Coach Roeder, I said Tim Monsman, I'm crazy. Coach Monsman and Coach Roeder at Parkland and Freedom, and Coach Falzone at Nazareth. Like, when we talk about kids, like, these are kids that you can't not talk about. And let's be honest, I only talked about one kid from Parkland when there's still Trey Trumba. And TJ Lawrence ain't no slouch, Through the first 2 weeks of his high school career, the kid's averaging 5 to 6 yards a carry as a freshman. Last week he had 5 carries for 38 yards in his first career game. I believe the kid had 8 carries for almost 100 yards, and he had a touchdown. So, it is, to me, I'm grateful that I've got the ability to meet and coach and hopefully positively influence so many really good kids. And I'm excited to watch them as they continue. And I believe that all of these kids are going to continue to have a great season and great high school careers and go on to play college football and be successful. Now, when I say play college football, I don't mean that all of them are going to go play Division I. Some of them are going to play D3. Some of them are going to play D2. Some will play 1AA. Some will play Division I that aren't Power 5. And some of them, I believe, could be Power 5 players if, their coaches put them in positions to be successful. And so, you're going through the first 2 weeks, and those are our top performers that we've had and that we're excited to continue to watch, and, just really excited and happy for, as a fan of football and a fan of these athletes. As kids continue to get better and as the season continues to go on, we're really excited to talk about everybody. And those are just the athletes. Ayachi from Becca. Everybody said, he should be in the top returning lineman list. Well, he didn't get to play week 1 against Southern Lehigh. Not Southern Lehigh, against Pleasant Valley, because of the fact that a college camp had him in shoulder pads and a helmet and therefore cost him 1 game. And then he came back this past week against Whitehall and was a grown man. So another kid that's performing at a high level, but yet again, it's only 1 week. We look forward to seeing him do more, and we believe that he's capable of doing more. And then obviously Mario Landino at Emmaus, yet again, has played really good football to this point. And granted, you're not going to be able to say much after Nazareth comes in and shellacks the team, but individually he's playing at a high level. Sean Kinney's playing at a high level over there at Nazareth. And so collectively, we have a ton of kids that are playing football at a high level. If I decided to talk about all of them that are playing at a high level, the episode would probably never end. But when we talk about who is performing at the highest levels, so far these 10 kids are ahead of the pack, in my personal opinion, and in many's personal opinion. And like I said, so many of us are so excited for what they do. Now, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. Freedom has so much talent. And I think once they figure that out over there and they figure out how to get them the ball, that offense is going to explode. And I can't wait to see it. Now, to move on, and we can get this done with, we said we were going to talk about middle school and youth football. I have 7 kids that people need to go watch as far as youth football. If you're a fan of football and you're a fan of kids and you want to enjoy just a great weekend, 1, 120-pound Steelers team. There's multiple kids on that team, but there's 2 kids in particular that they stand out from the rest. And Kai Williams, who's their quarterback and one of the best athletes I've seen as a 10-year-old, and Nuna Brody, who's the younger brother of Rodney Brody over at Catasauqua. He plays the game with a level of physicality that reminds me personally of a Sean Taylor. Like, he just loves coming down and smacking people, and offensively, he's just a tough runner, and love to see it. You go over to the 120-pound Saints team, you have Jaquier Laney, who, again, fantastic athlete, kid that you love to watch and you love to see play. Caleb Michaels, big receiver, more polished than most kids for his age. And then you go up north and you want to watch Tyler Kirk, who plays for the Penargil youth team, around their 120 level. Really, really good linebacker. Loves to be physical, loves to tackle, really good in space, really good hands. And who I believe might be the best 10U quarterback in the Northeast and possibly the country, younger brother of Hayden Downs, who was in our top freshman and going into this year, Dylan Downs. This kid is an absolute baller who will do anything and everything to possibly win a game. One of my favorites. A lot of kids that, in this area that we should go watch. And then if you go over to Emmaus, you drop down one level. Dash Jones. Getting to see what he's done last year and how he's grown this year. Last year he was younger on the level. This year he's with his right age group and the kid is dominant. So definitely want to get and checking out youth sports. Parents, please send me what the kids have done so that way we can highlight them and talk about them and give them the shine that they rightfully deserve. All in all, we appreciate you all checking in this week, and we'll see you all next week. Peace.